Back in those days, our student years. Strumming guitars and humming folk songs, we cherished the time spent having pointless chats with friends. I, attending art school, had increasingly become absorbed in painting oil canvases day by day. My girlfriend at the time, Catherine, was a stylish woman who effortlessly pulled off a floral blouse with bell-bottom jeans. She always stood out in the painting department for her strong character and unique perspective. Her work was striking and she was expected to have a bright future. As for me, I wasn't particularly academic or flashy, I was more of a quiet student. Often teased by others as being as different as night and day compared to her. But Catherine always stood by me, saying, "I chose him, and Jack's the one for me." Every time she said that, I felt a mixture of embarrassment and pride. "Besides Jack, you have charming points that only I can see." "Wait, what exactly are my charming points?" What about the mole by your ear?" "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you're sexy." I loved her for making such playful jokes. In our junior year of college, while everyone was hustling to find a job, Catherine was passionate about promoting her artwork, determined to make a living out of it. "I've just managed to get a gallery to display my paintings." "That's awesome." "The owner really seemed to like my work." "Well, your paintings are charming, Catherine." I wanted to follow in her footsteps, so I decided to pursue a career as a painter instead of getting a job. "Jack, the sunsets you draw are captivating too." She murmured this while looking at my paintings. "Yeah, I'm planning to sell more and more of my artwork." "That's great. This sunset has such a passionate red. Especially the vermilion, it really stands out." "Yeah, thanks." Having her acknowledge me like that really fueled my creative drive. "Someday, I want us to have our own art exhibit, just the two of us. It doesn't have to be a big place. We'll center it around a masterpiece filled with what we're feeling at that moment. Wouldn't it be amazing if we could fully express the colors of our moment like that?" She seemed so radiant as she spoke of this future. Our college days, focused on painting, flew by, and after graduating, we lived together for about 3 years before getting married. We became a husband and wife who shared the same dream. While working part-time jobs, I managed to earn enough for living expenses and spent the rest of my time painting and trying to sell my work. Catherine was giving her all by visiting art dealers and promoting her work. She started to hold regular solo exhibitions and began to sell her paintings. In contrast, I was gradually starting to feel the limits of my talent. "Your paintings, they just don't make the cut. They lack vitality, you know." I heard comments like these quite often. Another rejection today. How many galleries have I visited this month? Facing the reality of not being able to sell my paintings as I had hoped to, I was becoming increasingly disheartened. Even though Catherine's name is starting to get recognized, I spent my days in despair, constantly comparing myself to her. Is this really the right path for me? Maybe my paintings will never sell. Maybe I never had any talent for painting in the first place. Perhaps there's no future for me in continuing as an artist. With these thoughts, I began to consider looking for a regular job. Then one day, I decided to share my feelings with Catherine. "Catherine, I'm thinking of getting a job in a regular company." Her eyes widened in surprise for a moment, but then she replied nonchalantly, "That sounds nice." "That's it?" I prompted. And she responded, "It's not my place to criticize your decision. I think you've thought this through and made up your mind. So if that's what you want to do, I think it's fine." I was irritated by her attitude and blurted out, "You're just pitying me because you think you're talented, aren't you? There's no need to be so self-deprecating. It's your issue." "I'm just saying it's not my place to interfere," she replied. "A successful artist like you wouldn't understand how I feel." "Why? Why do you have to get so defensive like that?" "It's hard. Being with you, I always end up comparing myself. We can't stay together anymore. Besides, we don't have any kids, right? Maybe it's better if we get a divorce." Catherine, with her head looking down, answered, "Okay. If that's what you want, Jack. I'm okay with it." I was stunned by her quick response. We had to be honest and agree to the divorce. It couldn't be helped. I thought that was the best course. The next day, I went to get a divorce form from the city hall, signed it, packed my belongings, and left the apartment. After separating from Catherine, I rented a place with the little money I had and desperately looked for a job, but things were harder than I imagined. What have you been doing since graduating from art school? I've been working part-time in a restaurant while visiting art dealers to promote my paintings. Even when I passed the document screening and got to the interview stage, the interviewers looked unimpressed as they reviewed my resume. What game are they playing at? Getting through the document screening only to be rejected. How many companies have I been turned down by this month? Job hunting is just as tough. I was about to give up on finding a permanent position, ready to resign myself to day labor, when someone from a printing company took an interest in my background. We were actually looking for someone who can do design work. I'd really like you to work with us. Thank you. I'll do my best. The principles of design I learned in art school had finally paid off. It was a hard-earned job offer that I finally secured. I had to work hard and make up for lost time. From that point on, I worked tirelessly, dedicating every day to my new job. I stopped socializing with friends and drinking, working late into the night. Nowadays, there's talk of black companies, but back then, working endlessly without regard for time or days off seemed normal. Of course, this meant no time for romance or any thought of remarriage. Aren't you going to get married, Jack? Every time someone asked me that, I thought of Catherine. I wondered how she was doing now. Even though I still cared about her, I knew we could never meet again. I bet Catherine has found someone new by now. Thinking that way was my attempt to accept a reality I couldn't change. 40 years passed since I started working at the company, and before I knew it, I had reached the retirement age of 65. I've aged before I even realized it. I stared into the bathroom mirror and let out a deep sigh. Due to my busy life, I hadn't noticed how much I had changed. My hair was now speckled with gray, and my face was lined with wrinkles. I had been thinking about quitting the company, but they offered me a position as a contract employee after retirement. With more time on my hands, I started frequenting a local bar, and at 65, I learned to truly savor a drink in good company for the first time. Welcome. Jack. Your usual spot at the counter is open. The small eatery in the neighborhood was run by a woman who would entertain the regulars' complaints and silly banter. Jack, you used to paint, right? You mentioned that once before. Yeah. It's been decades since I last painted. As the hostess brought up this topic, a regular, Tom, also chimed in. Wow, I'd love to see one of your paintings, Jack. I can't really paint properly anymore. I replied with a wry smile. Then the hostess asked again. But don't people usually retain that kind of skill? It's not something you just forget, right? I wonder. Next time, you should paint something to show us. Tom seemed really eager to see my paintings. If there's a chance, I will. When will that chance be? The hostess started the conversation again. Oh, and Jack? Yes? A friend of mine is hosting an exhibition at a gallery. You should go check it out. Saying such, the hostess handed me a postcard. Group exhibition and nostalgia? There are some impressive pieces on display. You should definitely go see it. Come to think of it, it's been a long time since I last saw a painting. Oh, that sounds good. I don't know much about art myself, Tom chimed in. Well then Tom, you wouldn't understand Jack's paintings either, would you? Jack's paintings must be good because they are his, you know. Tom, just what kind of reasoning is that? Why not, we're buddies, right, Jack? You're something else. I'll go check it out on my next day off. A few days later, I visited the gallery mentioned on the postcard. It was a modestly sized space, adorned with a few paintings and sculptures. Paintings really are something special. I felt a sense of nostalgia. As I slowly admired the artworks, one painting in particular caught my eye. What an intense presence. It depicted an eerily isolated pair of eyes against the backdrop of a fiery red sun. I was drawn to it, unable to look away. Do you like that painting? As I stood in front of the painting, a woman approached me for conversation. Yes. I used to paint myself. I remember using such red tones. Of course, I never managed to achieve this level of intensity. Curious, I glanced at the plate displaying the painting's title and the artist's name. And then, to my utter surprise, I gasped. The name written there was that of my ex-wife. Could it be Catherine? The woman looked at my face, puzzled, and continued. Do you know Catherine? We dated in college and then got married, but we divorced soon after. It's been 40 years since our divorce. Wait. Are you Jack? Yes, that's me. I see. She whispered softly, then continued speaking. This is my friend Catherine's painting. She passed away from cancer in her 30s. We're displaying her work here as a tribute. She passed away. I can't believe it. I was so shocked that I couldn't find the words to continue speaking. Until the end, she spoke about you. Catherine did? Catherine always regretted thinking that she might have crushed your talent. What? She worried that the more she pursued her passion for art, the more pressure it put on you. That's so. She couldn't bear to see you suffer, so she thought separating was the only way. She told me how Catherine had always been concerned about me. I was overwhelmed and didn't know what to say. Jack, there's something I'd like to give you. Something for me? Yes. The woman brought out some oil painting supplies from the back. These were Catherine's art materials. I'm sure she would have wanted you to use them. But I've already given up painting. I've put down my brushes for good. Jack, when Catherine was painting this, she said she wanted to recreate the passionate reds you used to paint with. I was at a loss for words. She thought that if she could replicate that color, it might bring back the feelings from those times. Catherine. Please paint for her, for Catherine's sake. I'm sure she would have wanted it. With those words, the woman offered me the art supplies. The red paints are almost all used up. I looked again at Catherine's painting. The woman also gazed at the piece. Catherine must have put so much passion in the red. Yes, indeed. It's a really powerful red. Holding the vermilion paint, I couldn't hold back the tears that welled up. Later, at home, I placed a canvas and, looking at an old sketch of Catherine, began to draw the outline. It's been decades since I last painted, my skills are rusty. I gazed at the sketch, reminiscing about those days. If you're going to paint, make it beautiful, okay? Catherine's face, shyly modeling for me, came to mind. Yes. I'll paint you as the most beautiful woman, with all my passion. Wow, Jack, this painting of the woman is powerful. It's a masterpiece. Tom, you've become quite the art critic. Since then, I've started painting again, and today, I rented a small gallery to display the painting I made for Catherine. In the center of the room, on a large canvas, Catherine is depicted passionately and beautifully, shining in the midst of a fiery red sunset.